I'm Taylor Brown, and this is Time with Tay, the show where we talk with successful individuals across the world over a cup of coffee and hot chocolate. I've traveled to over 20 different countries in the span of 6 years, meeting several different professional athletes, entrepreneurs, and business owners. It's time to share their story. On today's show, we're talking with Kelvin Marsh, the strength and conditioning coach for the youth teams at HV71.
So just remind me, Taylor, this is your first season in Sweden now? Or
yes.
Yeah.
This is my first season playing for Vector Billion. Yeah.
And how, like, do you have an agent that finds you teams in Europe kind of thing? Or
So actually, I do not have an agent.
Okay.
I did have an agent previously, but I feel like I made a lot of connects.
Yeah.
It's like my 6th year.
So, I suppose it's similar with a lot of other sports. If you're on the European circuit, you get to know so many people, people changing clubs, or we need a whatever, we need a player type thing, Sure. So, that's good. So you got the job, or you got the team here, you got the connect via people you know on the circuit kind of thing, Okay.
Yeah.
And how you settling in, okay? Or
I'm settling pretty well. I actually really like it here.
Yeah,
I think like the benefits are great.
Yeah.
But no, my team they've been nice to me. I have everything I really need here to be successful, I feel like. Just it's getting cold now. But
It is. I mean, 4 people out of 5 that you speak to that come here in a variety of different sports, they basically say the same thing.
Yeah.
Everything's great in terms of the standard of living, the whatever, the convenience of getting around, and the facilities are good, but they always comment on the weather,
cold, Yeah.
I mean, I think the big difference here in Scandinavia is, many countries have a cold winter, but it's sort of the darkness here that really is a struggle for people. It'll probably be another couple of weeks when you'll really notice the difference of when it's not coming light till 9 o'clock in the morning, and it's basically going dark 2:45 in the afternoon, And if you get a cloudy day or a grey day, it doesn't really come light. I mean, today we're quite lucky, the sky's blue, so that does give you that little, if you look out the window, you wouldn't know the difference, so you wouldn't really know what time of the year it was, but the really dark months, you do feel a difference there. And it's the same with the players, like, from a coach's point of view. You do see that dip in energy, you know what I mean? And you really do see it. I mean, and also that goes hand in hand, because I run the youth development side. Okay. Well, I'm an S&C coach, but the youth, my main responsibility is all the academy. And this time of the year, it's a combination of when the clocks change and the nights get really long and dark, the cold weather kicks in. With the junior players, it's a combination of being a busy part of the season when they're, up to Christmas, basically. It's a regional series, and the top 5 teams from the southern region, which is what we're in, play the northern. Then they go in in the new year. It suddenly becomes the big league, so to speak. So it's kind of the business end of the season, so to speak, now. So there's a busy game schedule. Every game's an important game because points count to get in the top 5. It goes hand in hand with being a busy time of the year at school, with projects needing to be finished and whatever, as well as being cold, dark, and everything else. Right. So it's kind of that combination. So what you do really see a dip in the general energy levels, and it's like anything, as a player. If you're winning games and the energy is good. If you've lost a few, then it's hard, And the problem is with the junior players, they're having to do big long road trips in the middle of the week. Like, all right, it might only be a 4-hour drive to Stockholm, say. But they're having to take half a day off school, 4-hour drive, playing a game, driving home another 4 hours. Even if we give them, normally we do an early training before they go to school, but even if we give them that free so they get the extra hour or so in bed, it's still a damn hard day getting up again and having school the next day. And if you're doing it 2 or 3 times each week, as well as playing games Saturday and Sunday, it's tough. It is tough on them.
Yeah.
But from a coach's point of view, you're just trying to... I've been here a few years now, so you know the way the system works and you've adapted it to the Swedish culture and everything. So therefore, you know how to manipulate your training to try and minimise the dips in energy the best you can. So usually when I'm planning my periodisation, you plan it around the busy schedule in the season and the darkness and everything else. Whereas if you're, let's say, you're a coach in California, for example, Southern California, you don't really have them same issues to contend with, you know what I mean? So you have to be flexible depending on where you're working and all that, you know. So, but it's good though. I like Sweden, I have to say. This town in particular. Okay. I mean, I came here purely by accident. I mean, I have a daughter and her mother is from here. That's why I came many, many years ago. I was working in China before I came here. Okay. But it's like, it took me a couple of years to get used to it. Yeah. But like, a lot of it's the job and the circumstances. Like when I came here, you're going through a divorce and everything, so you've got that side of it to contend with. Totally new country, can't speak the language. Yeah. And despite everything that's going on, if you've not got a job or you're broke, your problems seem twice as big. If you've got money in your pocket, nothing ever seems quite as bad, you know. Right. But it's same as anything. When you get a job and everything, you know, it's one of them places, it takes a few years to get established, but when you do get established, life's pretty good here, really. I've got to say, it's a great place to bring up kids, like, you know, it really is.
I definitely see it as like a family place. Like, it's definitely a great place to have a family.
I mean, it's just, like, I've always lived in big cities. Yeah. Like, I grew up in Manchester in England, and it depends on where you draw the boundaries, but the Manchester region, you're looking somewhere around 8 million people. Yeah. So, it's quite a big city, you know, big city. Like with any big city. Yeah. There's a lot of crime and everything and whatever, you know. Yeah. But if I was to compare it like this, whereas like my daughter's, well, now she's 17, but a few years ago, 13, 14, if she phoned me up and it's dark, I'm at my friend's, I've just missed the bus, I'm going to get the next one, I'll be home in 40 minutes or whatever. Yeah. It's like, no problem, I'll just see you when you get here. If that was in Manchester, you're like, don't move, I'm coming to pick you up, do not stay in it, you know what I mean? It'd just be like unthinkable, you know, so.
That's a great point. Yeah. That is a great point.
I mean, the overall feeling here is just so much safer and, you know, it's, and it's, when I first came here, there was a Danish guy, I was actually working for the Swedish Badminton Association when I first came here. Okay. I was working with their teams at different championships, European championships and that. And there was a Danish guy who's a big kind of, the big boss, the general manager kind of thing. Yeah. He'd just come back from working in England for a couple of years. And he summed it up quite well when he said, like, the Scandinavian culture is all based on trust, whereas the British one is more mistrust. It's covering your own back kind of thing. It's that kind of... And, I mean, it's like anything. I mean, if you try and look at it a bit more pragmatically with open eyes, England, or Britain, shall we say, is basically 70 million people on an island, a quarter the size of Sweden. And there's like 10 times the population, or now about 8 times the population, you know. So, I mean, here, there's just that condensement of people, you know, and we've had a lot more immigration over the last 50 years than most other European countries have. So with new waves of immigration, a certain amount of mistrust comes, and it takes a couple of generations to filter out before the next wave comes, and you know what I mean, and that's just the way it is. I mean, with the British sort of history, colonial history, we've always, you know, there's always gone hand in hand with immigration and everything else, but that sort of goes hand in hand with certain ethnic groups mistrusting others, or a certain kind of hierarchy system. And you know, I think we're looking at least another 30, 40 years before it all mellows out and everything starts kind of there. But that's a whole nother podcast, like, you know. So, but I think that's one of the good things about sport. It's great for integrating people, you know what I mean? And coming back to the Swedish perspective with ice hockey, I would the big, like, the government, like the big sporting kind of body in Sweden, they of course, like most governments do, they realise that through sport it's the best way of integrating new waves of immigrants and whatever. So football's been great, basketball again, that's all very good. Ice hockey, it's not so great at that, to be honest.
Really?
Nay, I mean, I think when you look at percentages of new immigrants getting involved in sport, ice hockey is one of the lowest. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One is it's not cheap. You know, if you've got to buy skates, equipment and whatever, it's damn expensive. Like, another one is, for you to be good, you've got to basically have been skating since you could walk, kind of thing. If you've got a realistic chance of making it at a pro level, like, and it's kind of the new wave immigrants. Some of them haven't got here since they were 4, 5, 6 years old. Maybe it was another couple of years before they tried out skating. They're already 3 or 4 years behind the other kids, so they're never quite as good on skates and therefore compete. There's been a few exceptions, don't get me wrong, but it's not so often. And then you know, and I think also kids can play soccer, as you call it in the States. Like, you can just pick up a ball and play on a car park or whatever. Here you have to go book an ice time, book or whatever. So logistically, it's just not as doable as picking your ball up and playing with your friends in the garden, kind of thing, you know. I mean, apparently 20 plus years ago, from November to pretty much March, the lake was frozen, every bit of water going was frozen. You could just go out and skate perfectly safely, but as pretty much every year things are getting warmer, so you just don't get the big icy winters anymore, so that's kind of slowly took that away.
How have the games been? I took the bus here right outside, and I think it was Friday.
Oh yeah, there was a game on Friday. The
crowd, a lot of fans were pumped up that night.
You'll have to come and look at a game one night. I mean, I think the official capacity is like 9,000, but depending on how many sponsors you get in at the things, but some nights we can have pretty much 10,000 people here. It is a damn good atmosphere, I have to say, you know. Many, many years ago, I worked for Man United, and their average, I mean, it's basically 80,000 people at games and that, you know. And it is an amazing atmosphere on the good nights. But I have to say, so, you know, I've been there, and I've been to big games in Spain and Italy and everywhere else. So you've seen them big, full stadiums with great atmospheres. I've kind of grown up with that since being a kid, but like, I'm used to big stadiums with really good atmospheres. But when I first came here, I have to say, I was very impressed by the atmosphere, considering there's not a lot of people, you know. When I'm used to like crowds of 80,000 people screaming and shouting, I expected this to be very low key, but it's not, surprisingly. I mean, we're probably the best supported club in Sweden. It's a real hockey town, this. I'd say we're one of the big three, if we was to say that, in terms of the average fans, the size of the stadium, how successful we've been in our recent history. Last season was not a good season. It was arguably the worst one we've ever had. So there was that, and that went hand in hand with COVID and not being able to have fans in the arena and everything else. So our reputation has been tarnished a little bit because of what happened last season, but we're still one of the big three clubs. I mean, we're still getting bigger. We're actually in the second division now, like the one down, but we're still getting bigger crowds than 9 out of 10 of the teams in the higher division. You know what I mean? And we, you know, which I think it's one of them things, you know, the old saying, you know your true friends in times of crisis, not when things are going good.
True.
You know, there was that, but the fans and the sponsors and everybody, the staff and the players even, a lot of the players had to take a cut in salary going down a division.
Yeah.
But a big percentage of them stayed with us and took that
That's
cut
good.
and do it. And there's not many clubs that can show that kind of loyalty of
Yeah.
everybody. All our big sponsors stayed with us, you know.
That's
So
good.
in that respect, we was very lucky.
Yeah.
But I think on the positive side of that, they seen what happened as a bit of an anomaly.
Yeah.
You know, and fingers crossed.
Yeah.
I've hopefully I don't want to eat my words, but we're going to come straight back up again this season. And then the rebuilding process, once you're up in the top division, it might take a couple of seasons to get established and get back to where we want to be, a top level competing team. But the future does look good, and it sends a very good signal that, like, even in times of crisis, the town comes together, kind of thing. And you know, I mean, I'm quite proud of that, to be honest. Like, you know, it's. Yeah, I mean, of course, fans were upset. Nobody likes your team losing, but at the end of the day, you know, when they got over the initial shock, the season ticket renewals were as big as they've ever have been. And maybe a little bit of that was because of COVID. People realised they missed the games. That I really miss going to a game now, and I'll go again. You know, but one way or the other, you know, it still worked out very well.
I wanted to ask you that. That made me think of COVID right away, just like with the sponsors. What was your biggest lesson that you learned from the pandemic?
Me personally, or in a work perspective? Personally, I mean, well, just a little bit of a reality check. Things we take for granted, like being able just to get on a plane and see your family.
True.
Suddenly, you know what I mean? Like, it just made us realise, like, what a blessing travel is, you know what I mean? And I mean, all right.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, some of my we dodged a bullet in Sweden, really.
Yeah.
The government never went on total lockdown. They
Right.
basically put it out there and went, we recommend you wear masks, we recommend you work from home if possible, we recommend that you avoid public places. There was a couple of very minor restrictions, like restaurants had to stop serving at 8:30 at night or whatever it was, but they were comparatively very, very minor compared to other countries. But some of my relatives in England, like some of them said, I've literally not stepped out of my door for 5 weeks, you know. So considering we could still go to work and do majority of normal things, you know, we was very, very lucky. So, but, you know, so me complaining about COVID seems a real, like, kind of ridiculous when you compare it to someone that's been in total lockdown for months on end and probably lost their job and and many other things. So I was lucky. I managed to keep my job. I wasn't on total lockdown. I never suffered from COVID. I actually lost a couple of relatives in the UK, which was never easy, you know what I mean, for anybody. And that was another thing, like, losing relatives is always hard. It's never easy. But not being able to go and see them one last time when they know they're dying, I mean, you know what I mean, everything else like that. So I think for me personally, the restrictions on travel were the hardest thing to do, because especially when you live in another country, you rely on that easy access of flights and transport to
I can
go
totally
see,
relate
you know.
to that because I played in Australia.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Before COVID hit 2019.
Oh, she was in Australia when COVID struck.
I was before it. Before it struck.
Okay.
So luckily I came home and I was home before COVID hit.
Right. Okay.
But I was getting ready to, like, sign the contract and go back.
Yeah.
COVID hit. Some of my friends already left overseas, had to come back home. I was home for almost 2 years.
Oh, okay.
And then the Morocco opportunity came up, the Dominican Republic, and now here in Sweden. But I totally agree, just not be able to play basketball. For me personally, it was kind of on hold.
100%, yeah. I mean, it's took away your passion, your meaning for life, sort of thing, you know. And I mean, like, I think, like, okay, I'm older, I'm in my 50s, but, like, I can remember life before mobile phones and that. The younger people, they just, to them it's just another limb. They can't imagine not having a phone.
That's
but,
hard.
but for me, like, I mean, sometimes we need a reality check. Like, you pick up a piece of plastic and you speak to your friends or relatives on the other side of the world. I mean, it's just fascinating. It's just amazing when you, but you take it so for granted that you don't actually appreciate it. So sometimes, we really do need a reality check of just make sure, appreciate the small things in life, you know, and I think that's a lesson for anybody, you know. I mean, let's be honest, like I speak about in my book a lot, we all live like medieval kings, really, you know what I mean? If you look at how kings lived 300 years ago and then compare them to us, there's not a lot of differences. We get drove around, i.e. in cars and buses, you know, you go to restaurants, you get fed meals, and, you know, I mean...
It's true.
I mean, you know, sometimes we need that kind of reality check, and for me personally, because I'm kind of like yourself, where I've worked abroad, but I've worked on contracts, like I was at the Olympics, and then I was at whatever, the European Championships or the World Cup in football or whatever. So you work, you know, you're underwater working for 3-4 months, however long it is, but then you're free. So in between jobs, I've always travelled a bit and just gone round and took things in. So because I've been very, very lucky and been able to travel, a lot of it's been in like backpacking in the third world, well, maybe that's not the politically correct term these days, the developing world, shall we say, or countries with less than European economy or whatever you want to call it. But I mean, when you do go to the developing world and you see how happy people can be with so little, it's a real eye-opener, and it does really change your perspective on life, like, you know. And I think, if I'm honest, I think that's because I did a lot of that when I was quite young, like in my 20s. I think that was one of the foundations why I've been so successful with the coaching as you get a bit older, because you can see the transition, and you see kids, they're basically on what we'd call a croft, just a pile of rubble, but to them it's a playground, you know what I mean? And it's like, you know, they've got a ball, they've got a little patch of ground this bit, but they're happy to kick it and spend 5 hours a day doing that. They're just happy they've got a ball, you know. So I think it can be a lesson for everybody to
I agree.
to really go back to basics now and again. And I think a lot of people, I mean, you know yourself, on social media it was full of people just bitching through COVID and all the nonsense that went with it. But if we actually changed our perspective and tried to look upon it as a learning curve, most people can learn a lot from the COVID and the overall pandemic and how it affected the world, really, and still is affecting the world, really. So 100%. I don't think we're totally out of the woods yet. It's going to be minimum 6 months, probably close on a year, before we feel the world's back on an even footing, like, you know.
I hope the United States can catch up.
So are all your family back in the States, or are you scattered around? Or
so my family, really everybody's based in Maryland. My older sister's in Virginia. She works for Virginia State, and she's a graphic designer.
She's also a basketball player, or
everybody in my family play basketball. I have 3 siblings, but I kept playing throughout college. I just kept going professionally. But everybody's back home in the DMV area. My brother's in Atlanta. He's attending Morehouse.
Okay.
So he's about to graduate. Wants to be a lawyer.
Okay.
So everybody.
So you're from a semi-academic background, then you've all done the college route, like.
Both my parents got their college degree. They work for the government, so they kind of raise us, always set goals, stuff like that.
Not absolute.
But I want to ask you about your book. You said you're 50.
So basically, let me see. It was before COVID. Like when I was like 49, so what was that, like 4 years ago, shall we say? Okay, I suppose reaching 50 is always, you know, when you reach 30 or when you reach 40, you know, there's that psychological kind of landmark of, you know, when you pass it, you realise you don't feel any different, but you've got this like subconscious kind of, I'm 50 next year and whatever. So basically, if I'm honest with you, the last few years, I've had this kind of thing of like, when you feel your body getting a little bit up, like, because I'm an S&C coach, I've always took pride in being able to do everything I tell other people to do. So you've always had a high benchmark yourself. Yeah. I just feel an hypocrite saying, yeah, you should be, you know, you should be doing your 3K, your 5K, 3 mile runs in whatever, under 20 minutes when I can't do it. You know what I mean? I've always sort of like, my basic philosophy has always been leading by example. Well, if I can do it and I'm 50, what about you? Right, but of course, as you get older, it's harder to keep them standards up. It goes without saying. So as you feel your body starting to get, and it's just it's the recovery that you struggle more with. Everyone can go in the zone and really push your body, but if you know you're going to have problems afterwards, and you know you've got to, especially in my line of work, you can't be limping and whatever when you're in the gym showing people what to do. You know, so you've got to think a bit smarter. So I had this transition of do a quit and go and choose another thing, but there again, like people say, well, that's just your own ego saying that. You don't have to. So it was a bit of a readjustment in my late 40s, and then I went through a big sort of no divorce is friendly, but it wasn't too dirty. It was a semi-amicable divorce. Okay. But when that comes from out of nowhere and you don't see it coming, it comes from a blue sky, so to speak. Yeah. Oh, yeah, you know, your whole readjustment in life's gone, right, I still got a daughter, she was only 12 at the time, right, so, you know, and so anyway, all the normal stress that goes with a big breakup sort of goes, but it was all about, I think it was actually just after I did my TED talk, and I'm talking about a growth mindset and resetting new goals, so if I let something like this kind of destroy me, so to speak, I'm just being a hypocrite with what I was telling people to do a few months ago. So basically going through a big divorce. A few months earlier, I'd been talking at TED, doing a TED talk saying about the growth mindset and how to implement it, and you know, so I'm not leading by example. I'm being a hypocrite if I talk about having a growth mindset, but I let something crumble. You know, so you had to go back, readjust things. You was at a crossroads with your career, and you was at a big crossroads breakup and whatever, but you overcome these obstacles and and then as I did so, a year or so later, you're back on your feet. You have your normal financial problems, as most divorcees you do with 4 out of 5 divorces, but when you sort of get back on your feet a bit, everything's going, you know, eventually I wasn't really looking to meet someone else, but I did, and blah blah blah, and life suddenly becomes good again. But it's like anything. When you overcome a little crisis, you know, the old saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger kind of thing. You do. And then after that, and I think that was around 47 at the time, so a couple of years later, like 49, I thought to myself, this idea started resonating. Anyway, to cut a long story short, although so I started speaking to a few different publishing agents and whatever. The one I eventually went with, and we decided on the title. The title is 6-Pack at 50. But if I can explain it and say the 6-pack is more of a metaphor in terms of a big obstacle in your life and overcoming it, or a big goal in your life, so to speak. And I think it is very applicable, and I want to keep that broad. If I say, it's geared at guys 35, 40 there, and usually a plus, and from 35 onwards, shall we say, for a big percentage of people, it's a bit of a turning point in your life. If you're a pro athlete, maybe you're coming to the end of your playing career, so you have to think about the future. Many people are having kids at that kind of age, so then that's a big change in your life. The older you get, the more chance there is of losing a parent or losing someone close. So that again is a big obstacle. Or the other way around, people a little bit older, you might have had your kids young, your kids are growing up and leaving home, and then all of a sudden you've got a big empty house and whatever. That's a readjustment as well. Exactly. It's surprising. It is a real big readjustment, you know. So whatever the big obstacle in your life is, that's your metaphorical 6-pack and how you can train. So it's more, I consider it more of a mindset kind of perspective orientated kind of book, but with the the publishing company that I went with, they basically said, with that title, you've got to have some kind of training book. And with your background, always worked in professional sport and that, you've got, you know what I mean? So basically, we had to come up with a compromise. So if I was to say, the first half of the book is more the mindset, health stroke mindset type sort of theory side of things. The next half of the book is actual training exercises, if I was to say it like that. So I've tried to make it as adaptable as possible. So the first section is for like people new to exercise. The next section's a little bit more intermediate type exercise. The last one is quite advanced, like strong core exercises. But it's and I've tried to use a lot of like parallels from the sporting world and how you can adapt it to your to everyday life, so to speak. So when we talk about periodization of training, you're kind of adapting that to your normal lifestyle kind of thing, and a good thing is, like, basically a lot of it was just normal subjective. I didn't go, well, there's certain things you had to go deeply into the research and give scientific backup. But a lot of the training analogies that I gave was just more subjective from my own experience. A little bit like the TED Talk. But in the last couple of years, since I wrote this and since I did the TED Talk, more and more actual scientific backup is coming to light of basically what you were saying was pretty much right, like, you know what I mean? I mean, recently now, the guy's name slipped out of my head, but he's a sports scientist. He's quite, he's actually an English guy, but he's working for the mixed martial arts kind of big head office kind of thing. I can research his name, but it's actually slipped. But I was listening to an interview with him recently, and he's doing a lot of work basically exactly the same. Whereas, like, you seasonalise your training. With any sport, for example, you have majority of sports, you have an off and on season, and you're working on different components of your fitness, strength and whatever else at different times of the year. That's exactly the same especially in Scandinavia or Northern Europe, where we do get the seasons, because you do get that hormonal fluctuation during the seasons, and the way you metabolize different nutrients at different times of the year and everything else can be strongly affected by the seasons. So even though I didn't write it in a scientific context, there is definitely scientific research since I wrote it pretty much backing up everything I said. And even coming back to the TED Talk, that like the gist of it is, don't overpraise kids. Little bit of a taste, just enough, just to make them want more. And when you can implement that, it does really help to implement that growth mindset of just wanting to be better and impress. And now the research that's being done all over the place, top places like Stanford and places like that's really looking into your dopamine system and how it works. Pretty much most of the evidence is coming back is saying the same. Enough praise, but not enough. When they actually do something, just enough to make them want it again, but without coming. Because one of the worst ways to dampen your dopamine system is just for things to achieve goals too easily, if you know what I mean. Like, and I mean, yourself as a player.
I understand.
Ding, goal, ding, slam dunk, ding. If you're scoring 20 points a game without really having to push yourself, you've not got the same kick as, like,
it's like playing down the competition. And it's just like, for me personally, I feel like I play better, like playing in Sweden has probably been more fun and more exciting for me than playing, because I feel like, one, I'm on a team where I don't have to do everything. I can just play. But when you're in an environment where it might be a little easier to score, it's not as fun.
That's true.
Like
absolutely true.
Really.
I mean, I can only speak from my experience working in sport, or certainly in team sports, shall we say. Whether it's hockey or rugby or football, soccer, like, if I've been at hundreds of conferences all over the world where you're there with S&C coaches and physios and everything else.
Yeah.
Absolute 99 out of 100 will tell you hands down, if the team's lost 3 games in a row, the physio room's full of bad shoulders, bad knees, bad hips or whatever. If you've got a real big game and you win with a last minute goal or something, it's a real close game and you win, the energy and the atmosphere is there. Suddenly the shoulder doesn't hurt anymore or the knee doesn't hurt, because there's such a massive psychological element to it. And it's so, you know, and I think that's one of the real, that's what separates the good coaches from the great coaches, the ones that can really see deeply into the psychological side of things. And I do think, and I think even, I mean, with many sports, the S&C coach or the massage and physio and basically the phys team, you know, we're second down the line. And even though there's great phys coaches within the phys team out there, whether physios or whatever, but you have to, you're very lucky if you get a club where the actual coaches of the team, you know what I mean, see you on an even keel and you can both do that. Because if you can, that's a true, well, not only 9 times out of 10 are they the more successful teams, certainly over a longer period, you know what I mean, but also the overall working environment's better, and it's better for the players because they're not being overused, over-pushed, over whatever, you know. And I think a good coach, or a really good coach, he's the one that listens to the phys team. Or even like with even the guys that lay out the kit and in ice hockey, the skates and whatever in between, because they're seeing the guys in the locker room and they have a different relationship. So it's all a big communication system of like, he's a bit down, like he told me, you know, he's had a big argument with his girlfriend like yesterday or whatever, you know. The coach might not see that, we don't see it because we're just looking at whatever, and you know, and the more information you can get and you can analyze that, that's what sets a really good coaches apart from the rest, like, you know. And
100%, I totally agree.
I mean, when you think of your best coaches that you've had over the years, I'd say I've got absolutely no idea, but I'm pretty sure they'll be the ones who were the best psychologists and really got you, like, you know.
My best coaches, for me, for anybody, they know when we have conversation, it's more mental. It's more mental than we talk about the physical part, because it's just repetition, muscle memory. But we talk about how I can be better mentally, like how I can play better in games, how I can help finish games or whatever it may be. That's more the conversation.
100%. Not absolute. And I think a good coach is more of a mentor than a coach, so to speak. You know what I mean? You know. And I think that, I'm not saying I'm great, but I've learned a lot because I've been working here a long time now. With like, if I was to say it like this, like, when we won the Swedish Championship, the last time was 2017, actually, this picture there, that was amongst the celebrations. As you can see, it's a hockey town, this. He's Simon Önerud, his name is there. He's the team captain. He's from Jönköping. He came through the junior academy side, went all the way up, and then he scored the winning goal in the last game of the playoff. And it was like a Hollywood movie kind of script, you know. And he's there in his hometown celebrating. And he's a good boy, Simon. He's really in good shape. He's super strong. His brother was the European champion at weightlifting, you know, like powerlifting. So the whole family's from a real training background. I mean, it's one of them when you do the physical tests, you know, before, during and after every season. He's always the strongest in pretty much every lift, you know, like the counter movement jumps, you know, he's 10 centimetres above everyone else. He's basically a physical animal. So from an S&C coach, he's kind of a dream. But it was great. But I mean, I only had Simon for one season when I very first started. It was his last in the juniors. But pretty much of that squad of 20 players, I can't remember if it was 10 or 11 of them players, basically half of that team I'd had as juniors coming through. So you've seen them going from boys to men, like.
In your TED Talk, sorry I'm cut you up, but you mentioned that one of your biggest opportunities is coaching kids.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. Like,
Why is that?
I mean, my mindset changed when I worked in China. Right, if I say it like this, like Sweden, Europe, probably, maybe it's changed since I was there, but even when I worked in the States, like, if you're coaching kids, 4 people out of 5 assume you've got a son or daughter playing, and and then if not, like, well, why do you coach kids? You know, you're just a parent helping out. It's that kind of mentality. Yeah. If I was to say it like this, like, I don't know enough about basketball to give an example of coaches in basketball, but if it was like probably the most common sport that people know is, let's say, soccer, football. The big name coaches in football, the Sir Alex Fergusons, the Jose Mourinho's, the Arsene Wenger's, and whoever else, Jurgen Klopp and Guardiola and them guys. All the big names in China are working with kids. You know, it's like the other way. The mentality is totally the opposite. Like, for example, in China, if you used to say, "Oh, I'm working with the Olympic squad," people are, "Oh, okay, yeah, good luck." But if you say, "Well, I'm working with an under 10 or 12 team," they'll be like, "Oh, okay, wow, oh, you must be good." Really? Then. Like, they see pro athletes as a finished article. They see them as the uncut diamonds coming through for the future. You know what I mean? Yeah. You know, it's just a totally different mindset. And after a few years of working there, it made me kind of realise you can be a lot more effective with an 8, 9, 10, 12-year-old as you can be with an 18, 20-year-old. You know what I mean? The older they get, they're already in their bad habits or whatever you want to call it, whatever. The older it gets, the harder it is to change certain habits. If you get them young and you can implement, as I said on the TED Talk, I really think that growth mindset of wanting to show you they can do better, you know what I mean? And that's a skill. Well, it's a transferable skill. So even if they don't make it professionally in the sport, they've still that kind of mindset they can adapt to other aspects of their life. Yeah. And I think for a lot of people, one of the biggest problems they have, if you're very, very good at your sport, especially a sport that's got a bit kind of high profile, basketball in the States or ice hockey in Sweden, you put on a bit of a pedestal. You know yourself. Yeah, come on, let's be honest. You know, if you are, you put on a bit of a pedestal. Yeah. So you've kind of got this semi-VIP treatment pretty much all your childhood. Yeah. From a guy's perspective, I don't know if you see it differently as a girl, but a guy's perspective, you're one of the best ice hockey players. You're the guy that gets the girls and all that. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, of course, so another thing is, as you get older, you've never really had to work hard at a relationship because you've always had girls and you're seen as that perspective, you've put on that kind of pedestal. Unless you've had very strong parents that are really grounded, and probably as well, another advantage is you've got a few older sisters. True. You know what I mean? Unless you've had that, you have a very big, you have quite a lot of difficulty, like really working on strong relationships. Yeah. So that's one thing I do, trying to grind into the boys. You know what I mean? Yeah. Everything in life is about hard work and commitment. You know what I mean? And all that. If you're a team player, you're working for your teammates. If you're a parent, you're working for your kids and their mother, father, and whatever. It's all part of a team and a commitment. And I do honestly think, like, of course, I sound like an hypocrite saying about relationships when I've been divorced twice, but like, I mean, of course, you know, it's kind of, alright, I totally get it, but I do think a lot of people, male and female, if they're honest, we need a little wake-up slap now and again and really start working on our relationships, like, you know, I mean, maintaining. And whether that's family, parents, immediate family, or partner family as well, like, you know, definitely, And I'm the first to admit, I definitely need a little kick up the backside now and again to sort of get on it, because, you know, I mean, your partner's family is an extension of your family, so you've got to allow for that. And I mean, for me, like, all right, there's a lot of similarities from Swedish to British culture, but there's an awful lot of differences as well, you know what I mean? So you have got to be very adaptable. And I think one of the sad things is here, I think a lot of people, you know, Brits or Americans or whatever that marry a Swede, male or female, a big percentage end up in divorce, like, you know what I mean, and break up. I don't know the actual percentages, but just subjectively, people, you know, a big percentage do, which is sad. And I think, of course, it's never a black and white and simple reason, but I think a lot of it is lack of adaptability from both sides, actually, or one side's really tried to adapt to them, but they've not tried it as much. So basically, the long-winded point I'm trying to come back to is, if you learn that that kind of growth mindset when you're young and you're through a sporting training context, you can apply it to other areas of your life, and you know what I mean. And if you learn to be a bit more pragmatic with your thinking, sit back and whatever, you've got the growth mindset. You can sit back and analyse something, and then you can learn to adapt it in other ways. And I think, like, if you're a good player, you're on there and you've got that, you can adapt. When your career's finished, you can readapt it to other areas of your life, you know.
So I have a question. Like, for me, looking up to like the big time players in the game of basketball, like LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, all these top players, what do you think, how do you think they have mastered at winning at the mental game? Because it's a mental game.
100%, 100%.
I forgot Michael Jordan, of course, but
this is the big question, you know, nurture or nature and whatever, and I definitely think it is a combination of the two. And I just think, because primarily I'm an analyst, right? If we want to be stronger here, we have to work that, we have to do this movement, this movement. So the actual anatomical differences, you know, if you're 2 meters, like if you're 6'4" or you're 5'6", you're never going to jump the same. There's immediate physical disadvantages, but I honestly think, like, I've got no real research to back this up, but this is my personal opinion, is whatever regions and systems of the brain work, the ones that cope with stress and cope with that and can absolutely, whether it's your neurotransmitters that get dopamine to these certain areas at the right times, I think it's a combination of they are anatomically better at that, their dopamine system is more effective or whatever, or their amygdala can do whatever, or their, you know what I mean, whichever small thing it is. And I think they've anatomically got more efficient systems, but with training and certain incidents at the right times of life, I think it's just all helped to really adapt it and build it on from there. And I do honestly think, like, I think parental and other influential kind of people around you are massively play a big massive part in that. But I think, like, and I do always think there's a certain luck element as well, like, you know what I mean? I mean, if you break your leg just at a certain time and you don't get that contract or you don't get that scholarship and whatever, you know what I mean? There's always a certain luck element. And I do think the top guys, like if we're talking, like, you got elite and then you got like the super elite, Serena Williams, Roger Federer, Usain Bolt, I mean, they've got more. I mean, Cristiano Ronaldo, he's got more money than he could ever spend, but he's still drilled. He's addicted to winning. Like, I mean, the only logical kind of explanation for me is their receptors they're literally addicted to dopamine, and it's the only thing that gives. I mean, if you look at it from a physiological point of view, or a neurological point of view, whatever you want to call it, that's the only logical thing that works for me. And again, you know, at his age, at whatever, it takes one bad injury and you can be kind of gone, and then you've got that much money, what do you do, you know. But I honestly think, like, in terms of like depression or everything they call mental illness now, but in terms of like getting depressed or demotivated or whatever, even the extreme like suicidal, I think for a lot of that, when you've got that where you're addicted to dopamine, then your career has gone through either injury or something else. I think that's when it kicks in. But I do honestly think, Taylor, that a lot of the guys that have very successful careers after sport, who were real winners and got that, they were the ones that had that adaptable growth mindset. Like I talk about in the book, many players have got the growth mindset, they're addicted to their sport, but they haven't got the growth mindset in other aspects of their life. You know what I mean? They're terrible husbands or the whatever, or you know what I mean? And you know, actually bad parents because they're too strict with the kids or whatever, or the other way around, you know. So I think growth, if you've got the growth mindset with your sport, the next goal for you is to keep that growth mindset and that real competitiveness, but in other aspects of your life as well, like, you know what I mean? Wow. And then, so I think sport is one of the best tools in the world in terms of everything. As we said, as we touched on earlier, racial integration, it's one of the best things for building confidence as well as physically, you know what I mean, the health and wellness side of things. Team sport, teaching kids to learn how to play in a team and adapt to different personalities. You know, there's a big long list of positives from sport. So you've got to learn to take them positives and apply them positives to different aspects of your life, like, you know what I mean? And we're just very lucky to live in a time when there is professional sport. If we lived 500 years ago, sport was war. You know what I mean? Basically, you know, we'd probably be dead. If it was 50, if it had lived 200 years ago and it was 50, it'd have been a miracle, like, you know what I mean? So, so anyway, but I know I've gone right off base there, but I'm just trying to get, I do honestly, the longer I've worked in professional sport, I mean, I've been very successful. All right, I've been lucky and successful, so I haven't got too much to prove. Like, the Olympics was great and all that. My CV looks as impressive as most S&C coaches out there, but it's much more than that. Like, I've not got much to prove now because I've got a big long list of achievements. So I don't feel I have to do that. I can focus on kids. You know what I mean? And but that's my strong point now. I think I can't really give an analogy that I feel is whatever, but like, I do honestly think we in Europe or the Western world, I think, like, whether we call it European, North American, the Western world, shall we say, we do definitely need to change this mindset of just focusing on elite sport, but actually put more and more resources into youth development. Are you familiar with well, there's a term in the fitness world, like they call it physical literacy, and or their lack of these days, because physical literacy, knowing how to run, jump, balance, skip, climb, these kind of things, basically 30 years ago every kid in the world was doing it, whereas these days, because kids sit there with phones, or the inactivity within kids has kind of grown exponentially in the last 10, 15, 20 years. So what they actually reckon now, there's a big kind of organisation, the physical literacy kind of institute around the world. Like, one of the countries that's putting an awful lot of resources into it is Canada, believe it or not. They're really up on the movement, and the two have gone kind of semi hand in hand with the the athlete development models, because you can be very athletically talented, but if you've not got physical literacy, you're still going to have problems later in life, you know. And I do see that a little bit in hockey, where kids are great skaters, they're great at handling the stick, but they can't balance on one leg or climb or coordinate and do all the basic stuff that they need to do. And later, and that's why it's so it's trying to be promoted as much as possible now to do multi-sports when you're young, so you learn that basic physical literacy. Like, so basically, I'm a little off base, but the point I'm trying to make is, like, in the physical literacy world now, all the research is coming back showing that the kids born today are the first generation in the last 100 years, 200 years or whatever, that have a lower life expectancy than the parents. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And that's basically hands down because of inactivity. You know what I mean? You know, you've probably heard the saying, sitting is the new smoking kind of thing. You know what I mean? It's, you know, 35 years ago, smoking was the one that kills you. Now it's sitting, because that's, you know. And I mean, I've used examples in my book saying that, like, people say, oh, I've been doing your programme like 3 times a week. I've been going to the gym and I've not lost any weight. You go, yeah, but you get up in the morning, you sit down and eat your breakfast, you sit in the car for an hour going to work, you sit at your desk for 8 hours, you sit in the car all the way to the gym. You get to the gym, you sit on a machine and do a few of that, a bit of that, go home and then want to sit, watch TV and wonder why you're not losing weight. Like, you know, activity is every bit as important as actual training, if you know what I mean.
Right.
And if you're not doing that, your neurological system isn't working. And again, it's a subjective observation, but that's why we're saying mental health issues are going up. I'm convinced one of the biggest reasons for that is inactivity as well. You know, I mean, it really is that simple. I honestly think so. And again, we're so addicted to our phones that you're resonating on what people are saying and doing on social media. You know, if you're one of them people who just turn it off, who cares? Like, you know, that's actually a very good tool to have in your thing these days, you know.
I mean, I feel like I'm the complete opposite. Well, I can understand what you're saying, because when I sit down too long, that irritates me.
Oh,
like, I have to stay
100%,
busy.
100%.
So,
I can only speak from my experience here. Like, when I was getting to the end of the book and you had your deadlines, pretty much for weeks on end, my whole summer holiday was pretty much on my laptop 10 hours a day. And you know what it's like, you get working, you're like, oh shit, it's been 5 hours, and you know what I mean, you just get sucked in. So you've been in one position for 5. I can honestly say, in that 3-4 month period of when I was really working heavily on this, I don't think my knees have ever hurt as much. I wasn't putting any stress on them. It's only because of sitting. You know what I mean? As soon as you get back to your normal training routines, everything starts feeling good again. And it is true. I mean, when you sit, the inflammatory markers in your body do actually increase. When you're a very active person and you suddenly start sitting for a lot, it's a shock to the system. So your inflammatory markers actually increase more. You know, so there's a physiological reason for it. But again, as you say, psychologically, we're used to moving and having different, you know, stimuli coming in, because we're moving around, getting different things. Being in one position all day long, it's not good for your brain health. Absolutely.
Wow. That explains
I'm convinced
a lot.
of it.
Yeah, because behind the scenes, so I do videography. And back home, one of my freelance jobs is working conferences. Well, since COVID hit, I went from filming in person, like on site, to being behind the scenes, doing like the technology, IT stuff behind, like making sure the Zoom calls went smoothly. Yeah. So that required me sitting for 6 to 7 hours. I'm still doing video stuff, something I enjoy, but I feel terrible.
That's so true.
You have to get up and walk around.
Absolutely. And I do recommend to my clients and that, like, set a little timer on your phone every hour. Bleep, right, get up, even if it's only a 30-second walk around the room, get up and move, because it's so easy. You get sucked in, you've got emails and jobs to do and da-da-da. Oh shit, I've been sat here for 4 hours now, you know, it's gone. I mean, it's both a blessing and a curse, but because when you get older, your bladder turns to shit, so it's like you've got to pee every hour, basically. So basically, in a way, it's a blessing, because I have to get up every hour and walk to the toilet and come back again. So in effect, it's actually a blessing for me, because it at least stops you sitting in a bad position all day long, you know. So, but I mean, if you can discipline yourself to get up at least every 2 hours, preferably every hour, for just 30-40 seconds and down again, and 9 people out of 10 it will be beneficial for, absolutely. Like, you know.
So where can we find your book, Six Pack Ethics?
Right, okay, bit of a tricky one here. Right, let me see. It's made by a Swedish company. If you're in Sweden, all the Swedish websites will sell it. If you want to get it from overseas, you can get it. You can buy it from my website.
Okay.
But PayPal's probably the easiest. But I must warn people, the postage costs from Sweden are quite expensive.
Okay.
So it adds considerably to the book, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But if there's anyone listening who owns a book company in the States or the UK, please get in touch. And if you can be a supplier, it'll save a lot of money all round. So we'll see. But anyone interested, yeah, I mean, as I say, it's a training book, so to speak, but I consider it more of a mindset lifestyle kind of book, and slightly geared to people over 35, 40, but it's kind of applicable all across the board, really, you know.
Yeah.
If you've got a new goal in your life, you're 22 and you've just had a baby and your life's kind of changed and it can be a very, you know, there's a lot of good tools that you can use and apply in the book.
Yeah.